What's up, guys? DJ here at Top Deck Cards and Games. Today I'm going to talk about a standard deck tech for 5-color Ring to Light. I think this deck is really cool. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely not like the best deck in the format by any stretch, but you do get to play a lot of the most powerful spells and have access to them at any given time because of the way Bring to Light works. If you aren't familiar with Bring to Light as a card, it's a 5-mana sorcery. It's got Converge. And what it does is it lets you search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery with converted mana cost equal to the amount of colors of mana you paid to play the spell. And then you get to exile that card and then cast it without paying its mana cost. So if you can get to all 5 colors of mana, you can search for 5 drops from your deck and play them, which lets us play kind of an interesting mix in our deck because we don't have to have a bunch of copies of cards to find them. Instead, we can really diversify, play a lot of different answers to threats, fairly diverse threat pool. Some cards that you can't really normally play in your deck because you just can't count on them being there. So we get to play them as one-ofs and find them, and then play some cards to buy them back so we can just keep getting value out of them. So first off, there's the 4 Bring to Lights. Obviously, it's the name of the deck. We're playing 4 of them, and it searches for all of our threats and a lot of our utility. Then we have 4 copies of Jace, Vryn's Prodigy. Jace is obviously a very defining card in the current standard format. It's very good, and it lets us buy back the spells that Bring to Light gets. So when we end up searching for our Silver Bullet spells, like our Utter End or our Wrath effects, instead of us only having access to them one time, Jace and to a lesser extent Den Protector, which we also play a couple copies of, let us get those cards back. Like I said, 2 copies of Den Protector to do kind of the same thing. It also lets us buy back our creatures. Jace also lets us set up our mana a little bit. Den Protector doesn't do that as much. He doesn't loot like Jace does, but Den Protector does let us buy back our threats, such as our Siege Rhinos, which we play 4 of. Some people have jokingly called this like an 8 Rhino deck, or even more if you want to look at it that way, because a lot of your Bring to Lights just search Siege Rhino. Siege Rhino is so good that sometimes playing it for 4 mana and then playing one the next turn for 5 mana is the best thing you can do. We also have 2 copies of Nissa Vastwood Seer. Nissa helps fix our mana, make sure we make our land drops later into the game. Her Planeswalker side is incredibly powerful. You don't often find yourself playing Bring to Light for Nissa if it isn't going to flip, but when it will flip, she's well worth 5 mana. Into our singleton creatures, we have 1 Dragonlord Ojutai. Ojutai is just a very consistent threat. On turn 5, you only have to play 1 copy of the card because of Bring to Light, but on turn 5, you can pretty consistently get this guy in play if you didn't need to use Bring to Light to answer anything. And when this card's in play, it's just a must-answer threat for your opponent. This card's less good now that Crackling Doom is seeing just a pile of play. So maybe this should be a different, not necessarily more resilient threat, but maybe like a Wingmate Rock or something that provides card advantage in a different way. It just puts 2 bodies into play instead of giving us a 5/4. Past that, we have 1 copy of Gilt-Leaf Winnower. Winnower is an extremely good card, but most decks can't afford to play a bunch of copies of it because it's just not good sometimes. But because of Bring to Light, we get to just play 1 of them and find it at our heart's content. And with Den Protector and some other cards we're playing, we have access to more than 1 copy of it. One such card is the Clever Impersonator, another very powerful effect that most decks, again, just can't afford to play a bunch of. Because of Bring to Light, we can play 1 copy, find it, and this is great because sometimes you can't find an answer to your opponent's cards, or even if you could, you would also just like to have a copy of it. So like you can just copy your opponent's Planeswalkers or copy your Gilt-Leaf Winnower or something just to give yourself more value. It also can be an extra Siege Rhino for those of you who are into that, you know. One of the cards that we're playing more than 1 copy of is Abzan Charm. We're playing 2. This card could definitely be even a 3 or 4 of in the deck. It's just so good. Drawing 2 cards is always going to be powerful. Its removal effect is very good. People have kind of learned to play around it in a lot of aspects, though, keeping like their Hangerback Walkers at 2, for instance. Because of stuff like that, we have 2 copies of Silkwrath in our deck, though. Just a card to help fight against early aggression. One issue I have with Silkwrath is that, well, first and foremost, it can't be searched out with Bring to Light, but we weren't going to play Bring to Light for Silkwrath anyway. But the big one is that Jace can't flash it back. Don't believe so anyway. Let's see if I actually know what my cards do. Yeah, target instant or sorcery. Didn't want to look stupid there. But Jace can't buy it back, which is unfortunate. But it's kind of better than the alternative. We do play a copy of Reeve Soul for that purpose, since Jace can get it back, Den Protector can get it back. Silkwraths are going to sit and play. The downside is also that this is susceptible to Dramoka's Command. Holy crap, that's not even close. Help. I don't know why I had Boros Charm on the mind. But anyway, this card is susceptible to Dramoka's Command, which is kind of a downside, but I think it's worth it. Exiling Jace is super relevant. Exiling if they play like an early Dragon Master Outcast. to keep Ojutai's command from getting it back, and to keep their Hangerback Walkers from producing tokens. Into our one-of spells, our kind of utility section, we have a copy of Kolaghan's Command. We only play one, but this card goes pretty deep into the buyback our threats part of the deck. Like, we can flashback it with Jace and then get back like a Siege Rhino after we already played it once and added, let's say, a Den Protector back to our hand. And you can just keep doing that, even just like especially with Den Protector. You can play it, get back Den Protector, buy Kolaghan's Command back with Den Protector, buy back Jace, flashback Kolaghan's Command, and just get a ton of value and recur a lot of our threats that we don't play a lot of copies of. It does kill a lot of important cards in the format, like Soulfire, Jace, a lot of the early threats from the green-white deck. It's not a great removal tool against Abzan, but, whatever. I know that irked a million people out there because different people pronounce that totally differently. I normally say Abzan, but we'll get under some people's skins this time. Then we have one copy of Sultai Charm. Sultai Charm is relevant. It's just a removal spell. One of the big things for these cards is like they're all kind of similar in their own way too. Like Kolaghan's Command is still a kill spell. It's still a card advantage engine on its own. Like discard, get a creature back. It's not a great piece of card advantage, but it is still card advantage. This card's still just a fine removal spell. Kill a monocolored creature. Draw 2, discard a card is a fine effect to help us sculpt our hand. And kill an enchantment is, again, artifact or enchantment actually, is again just a fine effect. You can kill Silk Wraps that were on stuff like our Jaces. You can kill our opponent's Quarantine Fields, their retreats if they're playing like a Retreat to Emeria deck or something. Again, it's just we play one copy because we don't want to have a pile of them in our hand ever, but we want access to it. And once we find one with our Bring Delights, if it's good in a matchup, we can keep using the card. We have 2 Wrath variants. We have 1 Language and 1 End Hostilities. End Hostilities might be better as Crux since we're playing Ojutai. If we switch the Ojutai to a Wingmate Rock, I don't see any reason to play Crux over End Hostilities. I am playing the End Hostilities right now, obviously, since it's in the deck. And I think that it's just better to have the card that's always going to deal with our opponent's board instead of being in an awkward situation where we can't kill their board of Ojutai plus something else. Even though those decks don't really exist in the meta, it just seems safer to play End Hostilities. Moving on from that, we have 1 copy of Utter End and 1 copy of Ruinous Path. This is interesting to me because like Utter End is in general just a better version of Ruinous Path. Like this card's instant speed, it gets artifacts, it gets enchantments, whereas Ruinous Path is just going to get creatures and planeswalkers. But it was important enough in my eyes to have more disruption at an earlier mana cost that I put the Ruinous Path in over something like another Utter End. Then we have 1 copy of Crackling Doom, sacrifice effect, get rid of our opponent's hexproof creatures, kill their Ojutais, for instance. Then 1 Ugin's Insight, bring the lightable card draw engine. You get to scry a lot if you have like your rhinos and stuff in play and really sculpt your hand. And then 1 Murderous Cut. Murderous Cut is probably not going to be grabbed off Bring the Light. You might want to play 2 copies of it actually just as your removal spell to play when you don't, like that you don't Bring the Light for. It might be better than the Reef Soul that's in here as just a second Murderous Cut. That's not something that I've really had a chance to play test with, but I definitely will. Another card that's notably absent from our spells is Dig Through Time, which I think is an extremely good card in this deck. I just couldn't really make space for it. I wanted to try the Ugin's Insight thing a lot ever since I saw it. Anyways, let's just get into the lands though. First off, we have 1 of each of the new man lands, 1 Lumbering Falls, and 1 Shambling Vent. These cards are almost seemingly random when you look at a list for the first time and go, oh cool, they're just playing 1 of each man land. Like they just jam those in there because the mana in this format is just great. It's actually kind of greedy. It slows your mana down sometimes a little bit too much. But when you get to the late game with this deck, you spend a lot of life on cards, mostly on fetch lands and on Abzan Charm draws. The 1 of Shambling Vent, it does fix your mana a little bit, but mostly what it lets you do is claw back into the game life-wise, get yourself out of like your opponent's reach, whatever that may be. And Lumbering Falls is a little bit worse again because of the existence of, or prevalence, I guess, of Crackling Doom in the format, because it's pretty easy for your opponent to hit this with their Dooms if they're playing a control deck of some sort or a grindy deck. But in really grindy games, a hexproof threat is really good, and this is another way to help you close the game out. From there, we have a lot of fetch lands. 4 Wooded Foothills, 1 Windswept Heath, 4 Flooded Strands, 3 Polluted Deltas, and 2 Bloodstained Mires. That's 14 fetches. It's sort of just laid out in a way where we get a pretty reasonable number of each different color of fetch to find basics if we need them. It's possible that the Windswept Heath should be like another Delta or another Bloodstained Mire because you don't really want to fetch your basic forest because of Nissa. You really want to leave them in your deck to get value out of your Nissa to make sure you're hitting land drops later in the game. But you also have dual lands that Nissa can grab as well. So Not sure how relevant that actually is. Then we have one of each Battleland, one Smoldering Marsh, one Prairie Stream, one Canopy Vista, one Sunken Hollow, and one Cinderglade. And then 2 forests, and then one of each other basic. Plain, swamp, island, mountain. So we played 2 forests again because of Nissa. It's an interesting thing that we played the extra fetch land, or the extra forest, because it's kind of not really something you need in your deck. It might be better off as another dual land, but you need to hit a number of basics, and we basically played the extra one so that it's reasonable for us to fetch a forest in the early game to play our early spells and still have targets for Nissa later in the game. Because Nissa flipping is just so strong that we definitely want to take advantage of it. But yeah, so that's Bring to Light. It's a really cool deck. It's really fun to play. It's got a lot of neat lines in it because you really need to kind of maximize the value out of your card advantage engines, which are in a lot of ways just buying cards back other than Ugin's Insight. And you need to find the lines of play that get you to your mana. If you have trouble understanding like how to use your fetches in this format, which is something I lost a game just the other weekend in PPTQ to not fetching well, and I don't want to like be a loss in a major event because of that. I don't want to find myself on the bubble because I didn't fetch well. And playing this deck with such a greedy mana base, you definitely will be forced to learn to fetch well. And I think that's one of the cool things with the deck. There's a lot of precision in using your lands. I don't love how much time you're going to spend fetching and shuffling in this format, but it is interesting, and you can learn a lot about how to maximize the value out of your fetch lands from playing this deck. But outside of that, you can get a lot of cool sideboard options too. I don't have a sideboard put together, but because of Bring to Light and all your recursion, you can definitely get a little bit fancier with your sideboard and play some hosers instead of specific, like just improvements. You can play a little bit more like hoser type cards. Like Orbs of Warding, things like that. Just cards that will blow out certain matchups but are just awful in other places. There's not a ton of those in Standard, and a lot of them aren't cards that you can actually generally search. But one thing you can do that I don't have on my list is play Sidisi Undead Vizier. So that means your Bring to Light can search out Sidisi, she can sacrifice any other creature or herself, and then search any card in your hand. So now we've played Bring to Light for a 5-mana spell, which is just fine, obviously. We're more than happy to get another 5-mana card with it. Put it into play, and then we've searched for any card. So instead of being confined to getting sorcery, instants, and creatures into play, now we got a creature, but we also added any card to our hand. So we could get like an Ugin or some other Planeswalker if we wanted to play that kind of plan, which I think is a really interesting angle you can take with the deck. But anyways, that's all I've got for now, guys. Thanks a ton for watching. We will do gameplays with this video for sure. I promise. I say all the time that we're going to do gameplays, but this time I actually mean it. Tomorrow I'm going to come in and record some. I'm going to have one of my friends here to play, so we will definitely get gameplays with this deck up soon, and I hope you guys will enjoy them. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to our channel for tons more content coming soon, especially if you want to see this deck in action. Other than that, thanks a ton for watching. You can check us out on Facebook if you're from the Pittsburgh area. We have Magic events every week, and we do have an online store at topdeckcardsandgames.com. So make sure you guys check it out. Thanks a ton for watching.